it's Charlotte, your resident yoga instructor, and today I'm going to be showing you my top 5 favorite arm balances. We're going to go progressively increasing in difficulty, starting with one of the most basic arm balances that you can do in yoga and finishing with my favorite and perhaps the most challenging arm balance that I know, something that everybody should maybe try to build up to if you are a yoga practitioner. And so the first one that we're going to cover today might be familiar to you guys. It is called crow pose, and we're also going to go over the more advanced variation of crow pose, which is called crane pose. It's not that different, but it's a little bit harder. So for crow pose, you're going to place your hands with your fingers spread nice and wide, all 5 fingers pressing firmly into the mat. And crow pose is all about points of contact and points of pressure that help you create balance and counterbalance in the body. So you're going to find a nice firm point of contact. And when you balance, your elbows are going to actually create a 90-degree angle, and you're going to use that elbow like a shelf where your knees are going to sit. So I'll show you what that looks like. There you go. And it can be a little bit challenging at first to find that elbow shelf. You're going to feel like you might face plant, and you know you're doing it right if you do face plant the first couple of times, because you really should be tipping that far forward. So now I'm going to show you the more advanced variation of crow pose, which is crane pose. Crane pose is very similar, except your knees are going to find a point of contact at the top of your armpits instead of your elbows, and your arms are going to be nice and straight. This requires a lot of engagement through the core. So let me show you what that looks like. There you go, that was crane pose. So crow and crane, 2 of the most basic yoga arm balances that you will practice in the beginning of your yoga practice or almost in any basic vinyasa class. All right, time to move on to the next one. And this pose is pretty unique, but I think we can manage. It's called Firefly or Titibasana in Sanskrit. And you're gonna manage this one by sitting on your butt and bringing your knees nice and close to your armpits. And you're gonna send your torso forward and try to get your shoulders underneath your legs as best you can. You're not gonna get them all the way there, so don't worry about that. Okay, once you have your shoulders underneath your legs and you're like this little pretzel, you're gonna put your hands down and we're gonna push up, lift our butt off the ground, engage our core, and then once we're up there nice and steady, straighten the legs. There you go. That one requires a lot of hip flexibility and a lot of interior lift through the lower core. It's pretty hard, but Firefly is a fun one. It's one of my favorite poses. Our next pose is a bit of a challenge because it's a little bit of a bind with the body. It's called 8 angle pose. And that's because it kind of looks like an 8 once you finally reach it. So this one you're gonna prep for by sitting. You're gonna first want to choose your more flexible leg to start beginning to practice this pose. And whichever leg is more flexible, you're gonna sit it with the foot planted down and your knee up. And then the opposing hip is going to take precedent and sit nice and firm on the mat. Once you have this position and your hip is nice and steady there, you're gonna lift that leg that you found to be more flexible, grab the outside of the foot, and send that shoulder underneath the leg. You can hit this scale pose for a second really quick. Place it down, and the foot of the non-dominant leg is going to hook around the foot that was on top. And you're gonna lean forward and send the legs out to the side. You can see it kind of looks like an 8. And that was 8 angle pose. Like I said, it's a bit of a bind. That's kind of an advanced one, so we're moving up in difficulty. All right, next pose, we're really getting to some serious arm balances. You're not gonna have any points of contact with the legs here. This is just balancing on the arms. This one is forearm stand. Forearm stand is a precedent to working on handstand. And a little hint, handstand's gonna be our last pose of the day. It's my personal favorite, but we gotta get through forearm stand first, so here we go. Forearm stand requires a lot of flexibility in the shoulder girdle. So you see a lot of people with like closed shoulders. That's really hard for forearm stand, and it's really hard for handstand. When you're prepping for forearm or handstand, you wanna work on creating one straight line of engagement from your elbow all the way to your hip. That's gonna allow you to keep a long line of consistent alignment and keep your forearm stand nice and steady. You're gonna prep for forearm stand by putting your forearms shoulder distance apart. And you can measure shoulder distance apart by making a little cross like this. Put your elbows down and then just swing your arms forward. Super easy way to measure shoulder distance. Now, once you're here, you're going to find a downward dog with your forearms planted on the mat. And we're gonna kick up, right? To lift one leg at a time. If that works for you, you can just harder on grass, I will say. If you can, find a nice steady surface with a firm mat to keep a level surface underneath your forearms. And as you get better, you can make forearm stand more challenging by doing variations with the legs while you're up there. All right, now the piece de la resistance, handstand, my favorite pose, at least my favorite that I'm working on right now. I love balancing in handstand. Handstand is challenging, so if you're just beginning to practice it, make sure you use a wall, don't push yourself too hard, and take the advice of a seasoned teacher, practitioner, and always use a spot if you've never done it before. Have a friend near you to help you if you're kicking up to handstand for the first time. I practice handstand a lot, so I'm confident doing a standalone independent handstand in the center of a yard, room, yoga studio, etc. So I'm going to show you how to get into handstand. Just like forearm stand, you're going to place your hands shoulder width distance apart. So with your hands planted firmly on the mat, there's a couple ways you can get up into handstand. I'm gonna show you what looks a little bit like a press by lifting one leg up, keeping it lifted, and then kicking the other leg up from there. This requires, again, a lot of flexibility in the hips. So this is like a standing split position. So if you're practicing standing splits, you can do a couple squat lifts like this and just get that hip flexibility nice and warmed up, kind of increase the flexibility in the hips before you kick up to handstand. So starting in standing splits, I'm going to kick my second leg up to meet my raised leg with as little movement in the body as possible. That was a good handstand. I will say it is a little bit harder on grass or an unlevel surface than it would be in a yoga studio. And if you've never practiced handstand before or you're not confident in your standalone handstand, always practice up against a wall with a spot or with a teacher present. And make sure you have a little bit of practice with headstand or forearm stand first. Wherever you are in your yoga journey and your journey with arm balances, make sure you're having a great time and always listen to your body. I hope you've learned something interesting about my 5 favorite arm balances today.